Welcome to all you Serrans from the Central Region and to all United States Serrans, friends of Serra, and Serrans from around the world joining us on Zoom. This is our 23rd consecutive meeting of Serra Meets. Our first meeting aired on December 12th, 2020. And this one is special. It is broadcast live from the Central Region Convention being held this weekend at the Shrine of Our Lady of Snows in Belleville, Illinois. I am Mike Downey, a member of the St. Serra Club of Des Moines, Iowa, and president of the U.S. Council. Today's Serra Meets will not follow our normal format of a meeting. It will consist instead of a presentation by one of the keynote speakers at the Central Region Convention. But it will be recorded and posted on the Serra YouTube channel. Questions and answers will be limited to participants at the convention. It is my pleasure to introduce our speaker, Father Paul Hazing. Father Hazing is president and rector at Kenrick Glennon Seminary here in the St. Louis area. He will be speaking on the topic, Preparing Young Men for Priesthood in a New Apostolic Age. For our online guests, a little about Father Hazing. Father Hazing joined the faculty of Kenrick Glennon Seminary as Dean of Seminarians and Director of Human Formation in August 2015, and was named Vice Rector in 2019. He earned a Bachelor of Arts degree in biology from the University of St. Thomas in St. Paul, Minnesota in 1998, a baccalaureate in sacred theology, and a licentiate in dogmatic theology from the Pontifical Gregorian University in Rome in 2001 and 2003, respectively. Since his ordination in 2002, Father Hazing has served in parish ministry, taught in Catholic high schools, and at the Institute for Priestly Formation, and worked as director of Catholic campus ministry at the University of Nebraska at Omaha. Father Hazing, welcome.
Well, first of all, just a little caveat. I feel my nephew last year, this very week, he had a compound fracture of his tibia and fibia, his leg, and carted off the football field, very dramatic occasion. And his younger sister, my niece, who was 8 at the time, said, "Don't look at it, it's hideous." That's how she coached her brother as she's been carted away. "Don't look at it, it's hideous." So I woke up on a Thursday morning, and I don't know if you've had this experience before, but you ever get one of those little bloodshot things in the corner of your eye and you don't know where it came from? I get one every October for some reason. So that's what happened on Thursday morning. "Don't look at it, it's hideous." So if I have Terminator eye, it's a painless reality. No idea how it happens, but that's the case. So if you're close up on the screen here, I'm sorry for my Terminator eye. So I thought while we're together, it's good to get the messaging out about what seminaries do and don't do. And I thought we might start with just this threefold progression. We'll just talk about some numbers, and then some personnel, the people involved, and then finally the plans. So numbers, people, plans. Okay? And while I might speak specifically about Kenrick Seminary, I think it has a universal application. Most seminaries are going to be going through some of these plans. Most seminaries are talking about numbers, and most seminaries are talking about the people involved. And so the numbers, just to introduce, I introduced briefly before, seminaries, Kenrick serves a Midwest population, but there are 28 seminaries in this country dedicated almost exclusively to diocesan priestly formation. That's 28 seminaries, which is a pretty big number, and we're not real cooperative. We're a bit competitive. On the large end, the largest would be Mount St. Mary's in Emmitsburg, Maryland. I think they have about 160 men in their formation. On the smaller end, you'll find a place like Hales Corners, which might have 15 to 20. Is it a little bigger now?
We have 120 men studying.
All for diocesan priesthood.
Primarily diocesan priesthood. However, many of them are for the dioceses in all in Wisconsin. There are about 30 men who are specifically older, but we have another 100 or so that
They come there, they commute there.
that commuted from 10 miles away.
Right. So Francis, that would be Francis de Sales.
St. Francis.
Yeah, they come in. So, yes, I was thinking of just the population of older men that would be specifically dedicated, or a place like John 23rd, another place dedicated for older vocations. The rector there said he had 45 men in formation last year. So just it varies across the board. We have 125 at Henry. We can't handle more than 140. That would be a full building. But it consists of 3 programs. A college program, so guys who graduated high school or transferred from another college. Glennon, Cardinal Glennon College, 31 men. And I think there's 4 dioceses represented in that college. Kansas City, Kansas, Tyler, Texas, obviously St. Louis, and the 4th one is slipping my mind right now. Belleville doesn't go there. Yeah, they do, for College Seminary. Of course, sister knows, she's better than I. She should be rector at the post. She'd be great. You'll find out why. And so we have a vice rector for the college, Father Schumer, a native of Perryville, and a wonderful St. Louis priest, and his co-director with him, Father Don Anstead, who graduated from John F. Kennedy High School, which is closed now, happy now. Two very good priests. Both ordained, one in 2009 and one in 2012. So younger priests, but very good at their job. They've been at it together now for 4 years in that college seminary. Then we have a pre-theology program, which consists of 26 men, and Father Fadi Auro, a St. Louis priest, who has a very circuitous journey to the priesthood. He's very suited to these men because these men have been on their own sort of journey, if you will, after college. It ranges from a 36-year-old man who worked for the Angus Association of America to guys who've just freshly graduated, like Ben Baker would have last year, freshly graduated from University of Illinois Champaign. So that's 26 men. And then in theology, they have 67 men, and they come from, like I said, 21 dioceses. And we just gained 2 new dioceses this year. Over the last 8 years, I think we've gained somewhere around 10 or 11 new dioceses sending to our seminary. Now, that's not a matter of recruiting or going out and asking people to come to our seminary. It's really a matter of word of mouth and people talking about who's there at the seminary. So, for example, one of the sending bishops, call them sending bishops, is there because one of his spiritual directors is one of our faculty members. And he's like, I want my men to have that formation. When I'm experiencing a spiritual direction as a bishop, I want my guys, they're experiencing. And so that happens by word of mouth, which speaks to the personnel piece of it. That we can have a program, we can have a really good set of policies, but that doesn't change anything. What changes things are people, relationships, and people asking the right questions. People asking the next question. People really passionately interested. If you look at Valencione, people who are humble, hungry, and smart. That is what we have on our team at the seminary. Who are hungry, humble, and smart. What I mean by smart is they don't all have PhDs. In fact, I'm the only one of the priests who doesn't have a doctorate. So all the other ones have doctorates. And they are tenacious at what they do. They're very good experts in their field. So there are 9 priests living in the building. A Jesuit who teaches philosophy. A Bismarck priest who's been a pastor for many years. He's a graduate candidate who serves in spiritual direction. A Wichita priest who takes care of all of our men coming into Theology 1, Father Ben Sawyer. Myself, I take care of the deacons in their formation. I used to have Father Ben's job, take care of the new men. And now we have a new vice rector from Sioux City, Iowa, who has a doctorate, was sought after by many organizations, nationally and internationally, and all of those times his bishop said, no, I'm not letting you go. But when Kenrick asked his bishop in Sioux City, the bishop said yes. Which is astonishing because Sioux City has done a lot of closures of parishes and reduction of pastors. They might have 30-some pastors in the field, reduction of almost half. And so for him to let go of one of his priests, it's like a farmer who's $1 million in debt. And he's like, what's another 100,000? Let's just do that. So a super talented priest, very sharp. He's definitely an upgrade in the vice rector position. And he takes care of the second-year theologians. And then we have Father Don Hankey, who's a bioethics expert, a St. Louis priest, and he takes care of the third-year men. He's been in seminary formation for 14 years. Now, Father Shane from Sioux City and myself, he served as vocation director for 7 years. I served as vocation director for 7 years. We both know what it's like to be on the other side of the table. We both know what it's like to be the client. And I'm competitive. And I remember, if you haven't noticed, I remember going to seminary visits, and I listened to the rector and vice rector of these seminaries, and they'd tell me things I already knew about the mayor. Tell me something I don't know. And so I say to vocation directors who visit us, because I'm competitive, I'm going to know your seminarian better than you do. That's my goal. Did you know his sister has been married twice and hasn't? No, I didn't know anything about that. Did you know his mom? No, I didn't know anything about it. So that's my job. Our job as a seminary is to know the man. And people who are good at that are who you want on your team. People who are immensely interested in knowing the man, in knowing him truly, not just how he is publicly. Now, these two guys, Father Loogie and Ben Baker, they're very good publicly. But here's the good news. They're also very good privately. But you can see this sometimes where somebody has a public life, but they have a private life that doesn't match up. It hasn't been that been part of our heartache. Right? So to have the kind of personnel that can lean in and really know the man, because when it comes time for ordination, do you find him to be worthy? Is the question of the bishop. And the response of the vocation director is, after inquiry among the Christian people, upon the recommendation of those concerned with their formation, I testify that this man, this person, has been found worthy. And so there's an inquiry among the Christian people, which I want to return to later. And there's a recommendation from those concerned. That's the seminary, deeply concerned with the man's formation and who he is. The personnel we have create a team. And the team is cohesive in a vision of forming holy, healthy, joy-filled, and Father Mason, my predecessor, is now the vicar for clergy in the Diocese of Sioux Falls. And he says, I think you need to add another H, hardworking. We need hardworking priests. Healthy, holy, joy-filled, hardworking parish priest. That's the vision. Parish priesthood. The team isn't just men, just to be sure that you know this. The team, the two people who know the most about the men in our seminary are Dr. Suzanne Harbath, who's been working at our seminary for 30 years, and she also does work with priests who are in recovery or in therapy. So she sees both ends of the spectrum, the beginning and the later. And her long experience allows her to have some pretty good prudence about things. Archbishop Lucas, my Archbishop in Omaha, hired her, and she protested, what do I know about seminary formation? My specialty is adolescent delinquency and juvenile mental health problems, and he said, you'll be perfect. Classic Lucas humor right there. So she takes care of the theologians, 60-some theologians every year, 70-some. On the other side, as Ben was saying, counseling every 2 weeks has been his experience, and that's what Joanne Gershon. Now, Joanne was married to an MD for 29 years. He died about 9 years ago during surgery. In fact, there was a surgical intervention that went awry. Anyway, Joanne also did a lot of work with medical professionals in their recovery. So doctors and nurses who were addicts. You want to talk about double lives? She knows when somebody's fiddling. She knows when somebody's not being straight up truthful. And as one of my friends says, there's no one more dangerous than a woman with the truth. So we have two women who are very, very truthful. And they know our seminarians better than many. They know our men. And they run not only individual therapy sessions. You don't do therapy in seminary necessarily, but individual counseling sessions. If a man needs therapy, he can't be in seminary. That's too time intensive. It's too difficult to be a student and be in therapy at the same time, and in community. So they also have these anxiety groups, as I mentioned before, and they run these groups, 3 of them, one in college, one in pre-theology, one in theology. And that allows them to really tackle a lot of work all at once, a lot of counseling all at once. But that's kind of the core team, the priests, the counselors, and then our staff. And the women we have on staff are very sharp in noticing things. They're wives, they're mothers. We do have 2 single women. They're also very astute about what 20-year-old men should be capable of. And those interactions with these young men allow us to get further insight. Because again, someone can be very publicly polished, but in the private moments, or those offhand moments they might have with our staff, something is revealed. And that's the goal of seminary formation, to help a man reveal himself. If the church is to know a man, what's the job of the seminarian? Not get good grades. Not just be a student. The job of a seminarian is to reveal himself. Who are you? Self-revelation comes out of self-awareness. Learning who I am is a lifelong reality. When did you think you really knew yourself well? And when did you feel like a mystery to yourself? Is there some ebb and flow to that story? Did you think when you got married, I know who I am, I'm getting married to this person. And then you got married and you start to live the married life, and oh my goodness, I had no idea. What have you learned? A lot. But that self-awareness, that self-knowledge is bloody labor. And so the men are invited to this disposition. In the seminary, it's not, am I called to be a priest? That's not the question you should wake up with. The question to wake up with every day as a seminary is, am I being honest? Am I being generous? I think those are 2 good questions for all of us. Am I being honest? Am I being generous? And in that honesty and generosity, I'll learn with the church what my calling is. Because the job of the seminary isn't to make sure we get more priests. No. The job of the seminary is to listen and to help a man be passionately interested in listening to God. And so we tell the men, we're not interested in you becoming priests, which is a bit alarming to some of our clients, if you will. No, we're deeply interested in you listening to God. Because if a man's listening to God and he becomes a priest, amen. Fantastic. But if a man's not listening to God and he becomes a priest, dear Lord, we're in trouble. Again, haven't we had some trouble? Okay? So we're trying to address these troubles by having these dispositions. We're passionately interested in you listening to God, and your number one job is to reveal yourself. That sets us up for something different, doesn't it? So the personnel is aligned for that kind of mission. And as we do this work, we're always learning. You know, it's not it's not something you can read about in textbooks. Seminary formation is more of an art than it is a science. Right? And we're trying to solve a problem. And I think the problem I've outlined here with these little cards that I've given you distributed here. Perhaps the folks online can get a copy of it, photo it for you. But anyway, we're trying to solve a problem. And that is, in this cultural moment, we have a lot of young people whose adolescence gets extended down the road. And so we have a problem of adolescent secular boys who need to become Catholic Christian men. Because we can't ordain boys. We can only ordain men. And just to back up a bit, here's a perspective on formation that I gave to the men recently, because we got to run in the same direction, kind of hard. And so at times, guys will push back and hem and haw. And I said, I'd like to think of seminary formation in this way: that you signed up for boxing lessons. Father Shane Deeman grew up in the Diocese of Sioux City, and I never met him until 2011 when he turned to me and said, "Are you Father Paul Hazing?" I said, "Yes." "Are you related to Father Al Hazing, who graduated from Kenrick Seminary in 1946? I said, "Yes." He's a cousin. He grew up across the road from my grandfather, and he was the tall Hazing. He was 6'2". He was known as the great high priest when he was ordained. And he was a gold gloves boxer. My grandfather was kind of short, stocky. Think Mike Tyson, 5'8", right? About 180 pounds. So he had a good uppercut. I didn't know my grandfather boxed until I heard the story about the boxing Hazings. But Father Al Hazing was the best boxer. And when he became a priest, he was keeping open a K-12 school in a rural area. And during detention hours after school, he would have boxing lessons. Father Shane said, "Father Al Hazing scarred my dad for life." I said, "How did that happen?" "Well, he gave boxing lessons after school and hit my dad above his eye, cut open his eyebrow, and he was scarred for life." But these boys, these 17-year-olds, were tussling with a 58, 59-year-old man who eventually died of a heart attack at 63. The Hazings is always a heart attack. Carry a lot around with me. Right? So if you're worried about me not being here, it could have been a heart attack. So I say, "Men, you're signing up for boxing lessons, which means when you get in the ring with us, we're not there to inflict harm or punishment or pain. We're in there as your trainer to draw out your strength, to draw out your true capacity." And that only happens when we throw a few punches, which means you can punch back. And I'm a trained professional. I'll teach you how to punch, because you'll need to punch out there. There's going to be combat. We'll need men who can punch out there and do so in a way that draws out other people's strengths and pushes against that which is not of God. To have that capacity, not to become combative men, but to become gentlemen. Men who are not afraid. That's what it means to be a gentle man. An educated man is not afraid. A man trained is not afraid. And so, get in the ring. I showed an image of Muhammad Ali given to a Lewis of business, and I said, "Our Muhammad Ali is Dr. Suzanne Hartman. She can punch." Let me give you an example. One guy said to me, "I went to see Dr. Harbath, and she remarked, 'When you talk like that, all I can think is, well, well, well.'" Boom. And he said, I don't want to be like that anymore. I don't want to be a whiner. And so his strength was drawn up by that punch, if you will. He started to grow in that capacity to choose to be a man. And so this boys to men reality is sort of outlined in this. I have extra copies laying around, so please take as many as you like. But just a sampling here. A boy wants to have fun, a man wants to do his duty. The boy is quickly discouraged by obstacles, a man remains committed to his purpose. A boy avoids serious commitment, a man commits himself to the right things. Do you hear the journey you have to go through? And perhaps are still on. A friend of mine wrote something like this for women. Sister, did you read your copies? Okay. We didn't coordinate, but she wrote a great one for women. Right? But this journey, a transformation into maturity, is so much what we're a part of in the seminary. And how will this best happen? Rome has a few ideas. In 1992, just to give you a brief history, John Paul II, saint, wrote a text called Pastoris Dabo Vobis that said human formation is the foundation. So remember those dimensions that were mentioned up here? Intellectual, spiritual, pastoral, human. If you don't have a humanity, none of those other dimensions work. If you don't have a fundamental humanity, that's the soil out of which everything grows, none of those other dimensions take root. So you have to have a red-blooded man to be a priest. And recently I was with a family, and I've said this in a couple different ways. This family had 4 boys and 2 girls. And the boys were, one was shooting me with a Nerf gun, another was putting noodles on my head, another was vomiting in the corner, another did something in his pants. So it was a wild evening, right? And I say, man, if you walk away from an evening like that and think, oh, thank God for celibacy. If you have that sensibility in you, I will firebomb your car. Because all you want is comfort. If you're not interested in family life, get away from the priesthood. Get away. If you're not fascinated with the mess, stay far away from priesthood. I asked a group of moms one time what you would like to see in priests. She said, I'd like to, one of them in the back, she was nursing. She said, I'd like to be able to have a priest in my life that I wouldn't be afraid just to ask, can you clean my toilets? I say, yes, I will be that priest. Another way to say it is if you don't have a red-blooded desire for a life and a family, you have a gutless priesthood. Because a priest says, this is my body given for you to his spouse. If you don't have a spousal interest, stay away from priesthood. This is why I ask lay people to have an imagination about, because imagination is the source of so much clarification. I like the would you questions. Would you want this man to be your pastor? Oh, he's a really nice guy, but I don't know if he could really be married. I heard some grandparents say, yeah, our 19-year-old's going to seminary. We're really happy for him because he never really was comfortable around girls. Right? So would you want this guy, if he wasn't a priest or seminary, would you want this guy courting your niece or your daughter? Would you see him as being a good husband and father? Would you see him able to maybe take over for a business for a while? You see, you all have in your humanity, from your life experience, raising kids, running businesses, hiring and firing, you have more human formation in your pinky finger than these guys have in their whole body. If the human development isn't there, priesthood doesn't flourish. And you, as lay people, need to be aware of who's developing well human. And those are the men you want. Those are the men whom the priesthood can be proposed. Find that human excellence that our Lord, now, our Lord had a hodgepodge of guys for sure, and he built upon that humanity. He can do a lot with a few loaves and a couple fish. But let's make sure there's a few loaves and a couple fish in the sky. Right? So the church has thought about this, and she's introduced something called stages, and Ben mentioned it. After 1992, the bishops wrote something called the Program for Priestly Formation, which they've had 5 editions of. And then they had a new ratio come out of Rome in 2016, which said seminary is now going to be done in stages. A propedeutic stage, 4 stages, a discipleship stage, and then a configuration stage, and then a final stage at the end. The beginning and the end are really moving us into new creativity. The beginning says this: a man needs 12 months with less classes, maybe 9 to 12 credits. He's taken out of his environment. He's given a detox experience for that 12 months. And during that 12 months, his focus is on healing, so that the rest of seminary can be healing. So often seminary has been about schooling, and that isn't it. Knowing stuff, as Father Tom said so well. I thought it was just about knowing a few things. What he was alluding to in his prayer life and learning to be a disciple of Jesus is learning to be healed. He's a Savior. He heals. It's really tough to pour out your guts about how things were in your family and then have to go to metaphysics. It's really tough to pour out your heart in spiritual direction and then have to go to logic. Now, you probably need to take a walk. Maybe talk to your friends. So it's a stage of formation in which these men are separate from the seminary, but given very intentional formulas. And the separation isn't meant to create isolation, it's meant to create solitude. So they don't have their phones to run to, and they have to run to a person. So the pattern of healing becomes relationship. So it sets up those 2 things. The priority of seminary is healing, and the pattern of healing is relationship. Being with a person. You and I want to become someone. We become who we want to become by being with someone. You want to become a husband? Be with your spouse. You want to become a father? Be with your children. You want to become a beloved son? Be with the Father. Too many men have seen priesthood as a project to achieve something. A friend of mine put it this way: in the past, if a priest got into some trouble, you could ask him what happened, and he'd say, well, I stopped praying my liturgy the hour, I stopped having a holy hour, I started to, isolate, I stopped with my friends in spiritual direction, now I have a girlfriend. He said now in the last 10, 15 years, he's seen more and more of this. The guy will finish seminary, and he'll be praying his liturgy the hours, he'll have a holy hour, he'll have spiritual direction, he'll have his friends. But he's disaffected in the parish, he's unhappy. And he's got intimacy issues, some boundary stuff. And then he asks this question: what do I need to do? And that reveals the problem. Why? What do I need to do? The man thinks he has to do things to solve his problems. The man thinks he has to do things to get over things. He's been doing seminary, he's been doing prayer, and he thinks he can do priesthood. He doesn't know who he is interiorly. He doesn't have an interior maturity upon which to build. I say this with some pain in my heart because I just had 3 classmates this year. I've ordained 20 years, 3 classmates move out of the priesthood. That's out of a class of 42, 15 have moved out of priesthood. Brilliant guys, diplomat, a couple lawyers, Harvard grad, Georgetown grad, brilliant, all got A's in Christology. But something humanly and spiritually was missing. But that human foundation has to be there. And so the hope is that a man starts out focusing on this human formation and getting healing for the rest of his life. And reaching out in relationship for that healing for the rest of his life. And wrestling with whatever comes through relational life for a lifetime of healing and discipleship and healing, which he can then impart to people and go back into the culture and be a source of healing in the culture. Because he's come out of the culture, a secular adolescent boy, and now he's a man who's being healed. He's not a wounded healer, he's a healed healer. He's moving and healing in his own life. That's the first stage. Discipleship stage is 2 years. Configuration stage is no less than 3 years. And then at the end, Rome was looking at the data. They said about 10% of priests, or in the first 5 to 10 years, asked for laicization. It's a pretty high number, 10%. But that's the average. And Rome's thought is, look at what happens. They move through seminary, then they get ordained, and they go to a diocese, and they have no support. And it's not about lay support, it's about diocesan support. One of my friends was asking his older pastors, he was a vicar for clergy, what can you do to help bring along our newly ordained? And they said, well, nothing. No one did anything for me. So there's been generational harm. And so the point is, on the Vatican's part, if you're not ready to do something what we want to call synthesis at the end, you're not ready to have a newly ordained. We need a vocational synthesis in which you introduce the man and transition him into the diocese for lifelong learning. That's the goal. And so they're doing this to solve a problem that isn't the seminary's problem. It's a diocesan problem. And we as a seminary want to help dioceses do that by training up the pastors to mentor these men, to have healthy mentorship, to have healthy mentoring as we move into this apostolic age. Because, friends, the parish is changing, right? In that respect, as the sinecure parishes, the comfortable places, where parish tends to take care of the priest, rather than the priest taking care of the parish. Those places are disappearing. All the transitory gods for priesthood, comfort, status, they're being leveled. There's no place to hide. The priest will have to be a different kind of man, with a different kind of asceticism, and a spirituality that can live in this world with a discerning eye. The goal of seminary formation is to create a man of discernment who can call out the gifts of his parish and his people and help them be involved in discipleship so that he's not the center of attention. This is unique in the history of the church, that the priest would be the center. The council made it clear it's the people of God, and the priest serves. And people get enlivened and enabled by a sacramental life and a preaching life and a discerning life. So your gifts can be at work in the world, to go out to all the world and tell the good news. The height of our formation is forming a man who can not only make a disciple, but equip that disciple to make more disciples. And that's called spiritual multiplication. I learned that with Focus. I saw them do it. Focus is a lay organization. Look at the lay organizations that have life and discipleship happen. That's where we're going to see vocations. You heard them say it here. It was a moment of discipleship that moved them from cultural Catholic, faithful person to follower of Jesus. And seminary formation means that a man will be following Jesus, whether he stays and moves into priesthood, he's following Jesus, or he moves out of the seminary. It's not dropping out, it's not departing, it's not failing. It's following Jesus into his next steps. And this very weekend, 2 guys, one in theology, one guy, also known as configuration stage. I told vocation directors, your posters are going to have to change. It's not going to be theology 1, 2, or 3, because it's not built on a class or academic status. It's built on whether or not you're moving through stages of formation, which really puts it to the vocation directors. I kind of got rough with them a little bit. Said, listen, guys, the man is in our building for 32 weeks. The other 20 weeks, where is he? He's in the diocese. That means 1/3 of the year, he's with you. What are you doing with the man to make sure he grows humanly and spiritually? What are you doing? You just sending him off to Spanish studies? Is that going to help his humanity? What will happen? Because if a man's in seminary for 7 years, 3 of them are in your diocese. The seminary has 2/3 of the time, if you will, maximum. Our vocation directors in our diocese need to be involved in this stage-specific formation we're now engaged in. I have 1 minute left. I'm out of breath. But the good news is we will have priests who can live not just in the new millennium, but in a new apostolic age. It has some challenges, but I think the challenges are going to yield some real authentic faithfulness. Not only is there no place to hide, it means you're going to get some authentic experiences. You don't want to keep doing the same thing and expect different results. Okay? Friends, great to be with you. God bless you all.
Father Hazing, thank you very much. And I can't tell you how much confidence you instill in me about the process of forming the young men that we're working to get to make a commitment to God. Thank you very much for that. And this will conclude our Serra meets for today. I do want to just give you a brief heads up that I think a lot of you know we had to cancel Father Brett Brannon last month because he had a family, his mother passed away. He's agreed to come back in November, so he'll be on for the 2nd week of November next month, and he'll be our speaker. Hope we'll see you then. Thank you very much, and God bless everybody.